I remember the moment like it was yesterday, a snapshot forever etched into the recesses of my mind. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind of day that usually felt unremarkable. The sun filtered through the blinds in our living room, casting lazy shadows across the couch where I often found solace after a long day at work. I had just returned home from the office, the mundane grind of spreadsheets and meetings still buzzing in my head. My wife, Lisa, was supposed to be there, but an empty house greeted me instead. As I wandered through the familiar space, I felt a strange sense of unease. Something was off. It was palpable in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I shrugged it off at first, attributing it to my own anxieties. After all, Lisa had been acting a bit distant lately, but I chalked it up to the stress of her job. She worked in marketing, and sometimes the pressure could get to her. I decided to make us both a drink, hoping it would lighten the mood when she got home. I stepped into our bedroom to grab a shirt, and that's when I noticed. Her phone sitting on the nightstand, screen lit up. My curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, intending to leave it untouched, but a notification caught my eye. "Can't wait to see you tonight." The sender's name sent a jolt through me, Ryan Matthews. The name was familiar, a face I recognized from the silver screen, a heartthrob in countless rom-coms. My heart raced as I opened the message, and what I read shattered my world. The text was flirty, intimate, filled with promises and inside jokes that I had no part in. I felt the floor drop beneath me, a sense of disbelief washing over me. How could she? How could Lisa, a woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with, betray me like this? The initial shock morphed into a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I felt like a fool, a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. Memories of our marriage flashed before my eyes: the laughter, the late-night talks, the plans we had made for our future. It all felt like a cruel joke now. I didn't know how long I stood there, clutching the phone, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I finally put the phone down, trying to regain my composure. I needed answers. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was I that blind? I felt a deep sense of betrayal, a wound that throbbed with every heartbeat. My self-worth crumbled as I realized I had been living with a stranger, a woman who had shared my life but not my loyalty. That night when Lisa came home, I confronted her. The look on her face was one I will never forget: shock, guilt, and then defiance. She tried to deny it at first, but the truth dripped from her lips like poison. She confessed to the affair, her voice trembling as she spoke Ryan's name, the very name that felt like a dagger to my heart. I remember feeling hollow, as if the very essence of who I was had been stripped away. The anger bubbled up inside of me, mingling with a sense of betrayal that felt like a heavy stone lodged in my throat. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. But instead, I listened, my heart racing as she tried to explain her reasons, her feelings, her misguided justifications. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could either wallow in my pain or take control of the narrative. I chose the latter. I could not let this man, this actor, this scumbag get away with ruining my life. I would make him pay, and I would make her regret every moment of her betrayal. As I lay awake that night, the gears in my mind began to turn. I would ruin Ryan Matthews. I would take the very thing he cherished, his reputation, and watch it crumble. The thought brought a twisted sense of satisfaction, a flicker of purpose amidst the chaos of my emotions. I would show them both that I was not to be trifled with. And so, the plan began to form, as dark and intricate as the web of lies that had ensnared me. It's strange how quickly the mind can shift from shock to resolve. Once the initial wave of pain receded, clarity took its place. I spent that night replaying every moment with Lisa, every laugh, every shared dream, and every sign I had ignored. The signs were there, like breadcrumbs leading me to this bitter truth, but I had chosen to believe in her, in us. Now that trust lay in ruins, and I was left picking up the pieces. I spent the next few days in a haze, my daily routine disrupted. I went to work, but I was on autopilot, my thoughts consumed by revenge. I watched Lisa move through our home, her eyes filled with guilt and remorse, but I felt none of it. I was no longer the husband who had loved her. I had transformed into something else, someone fueled by a need for retribution. Ryan Matthews was a name that had once held no significance to me. Now it was a target, a symbol of my pain. I began to dig into his life, unraveling his public persona, the carefully crafted image of a charming, romantic lead. I had to know everything: his filmography, his public appearances, his social media presence. I became a shadow, lurking in the corners of the internet, collecting information that could be weaponized against him. At first, I thought about the obvious tactics: social media posts, public confrontations, maybe even an anonymous tip to a gossip column. But I wanted something more profound, something that would resonate. I wanted to ensure that when people thought of Ryan Matthews, they wouldn't just see the handsome face and charming smile. They would think of a man who had betrayed a husband and ruined a family. I started to write. I had always enjoyed writing, but this was different. I turned my pain into words, crafting a narrative that would expose him for what he truly was. I painted a picture of a man who, behind the glitz and glamour, was nothing more than a cheating scumbag. I imagined the headlines: Hollywood heartthrob caught in cheating scandal. With each word I typed, I felt a sense of power returning to me, a strength I thought I had lost. But I knew I had to be careful. I had to approach this with a strategic mind. I began to reach out to mutual acquaintances, friends of friends who might know someone in the industry. I wanted to plant the seeds of doubt, to let whispers of his infidelity seep into the air. I crafted anonymous emails, carefully worded to hint at the affair without revealing my identity. I watched as the rumors began to spread like wildfire through dry grass. The thrill of the hunt consumed me. I felt alive again, the emotional turmoil replaced by a singular focus. I became a ghost in the shadows, gathering intel and reveling in the chaos I was creating. I knew that Lisa was aware of my actions, that she could sense the shift in me. Gone was the heartbroken husband. Here was a man ready to take back control, ready to make Ryan Matthews pay. I remember one particular evening when I confronted Lisa about her affair. I wanted to gauge her reaction, see how deep her remorse ran. I asked her about Ryan, feigning casual curiosity, and watched as her face paled. She stammered through her responses, trying to explain how it had started, how it had spiraled out of control. The more she talked, the more I felt the anger rise within me. "Why him, Lisa?" I asked, my voice low and cold. "What did he have that I did?" She faltered, her eyes welling with tears. "It wasn't about you, it was about me. I was feeling lost, and he made me feel alive again." Her words struck a nerve, igniting a spark of rage. I was not just a victim of her infidelity. I was a casualty of her midlife crisis, a man whose heart was cast aside for a fleeting thrill. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the depth of her betrayal, but instead I held it all inside, channeling that pain into my plan. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers grew louder. I watched as Ryan's public image began to fray. Articles started cropping up, insinuating that something was amiss in his life. I reveled in the chaos I had unleashed. Each mention of his name in connection with scandal brought a twisted sense of satisfaction. I was becoming the architect of his downfall, the one pulling the strings behind the curtain. But beneath the surface, I was battling my own demons. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, yet I could feel the darkness creeping in. I was losing sight of who I was, who I wanted to be. My friends began to notice my change in demeanor, and I found myself withdrawing from them, consumed by my obsession. I knew I was crossing a line, but I could stop. The taste of retribution was too sweet, too addictive. In the quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts, doubt would creep in. Was I becoming the very thing I despised? A man blinded by anger, willing to sacrifice his own integrity for the sake of revenge. But those thoughts were fleeting, drowned out by the louder voice that urged me to continue, to see this through to the end. I was on a path of destruction, but I was determined to follow it to its conclusion. I would make Ryan Matthews regret the day he crossed my path, and I would make Lisa understand the depth of her betrayal, even if it meant losing myself in the process. As I delved deeper into my revenge scheme, I found myself immersed in the world of celebrity gossip and social media. It was a strange universe, one filled with glitz and glamour, but also rife with the kind of intrigue that could turn a person's life upside down in an instant. I spent hours online, monitoring Ryan's social media accounts, watching for any opportunity to strike. Every post, every interaction became a potential weapon in my arsenal. I began to follow the lives of those who surrounded him, his friends, co-stars, and publicists. I learned about the parties he attended, the interviews he gave, and the events he was scheduled to appear at. I needed to be strategic. I had to time my actions perfectly to maximize the impact. My heart raced with anticipation as I plotted my next move, the thrill of the hunt driving me forward. Then came the opportunity I had been waiting for. I discovered that Ryan was set to appear at a high-profile charity gala in Los Angeles. It was the kind of event that drew the media like moths to a flame, the perfect stage for my plan to unfold. I knew I had to be there, but how? I was just a husband seeking revenge, not someone who belonged in that world. I decided to craft a persona, to slip into the role of a well-connected individual who could blend in with the elite. I reached out to a friend from college who worked in event planning. After a few drinks and some strategic conversation, I convinced him to put my name on the guest list. It wasn't a complete lie. I had once been a part of that social circle before life took me down a different path. The night of the gala arrived and I donned my best suit, the fabric crisp against my skin. As I stood before the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. This wasn't just a husband seeking closure. This was a man on a mission, a predator ready to confront his prey. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I walked into the venue, the atmosphere electric with laughter and chatter. Inside, the decor was lavish, gold accents, glimmering chandeliers, and a sea of beautifully dressed people. I felt out of place, a wolf among sheep, but I steeled myself. My focus was singular: find Ryan Matthews and execute my plan. As I navigated the crowd, I spotted him. He was surrounded by admirers, his charming smile lighting up the room. I felt the anger bubbling beneath my skin, the sight of him igniting a fire in my belly. He looked so carefree, so oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the purpose behind my presence. I approached the bar to grab a drink, using the moment to gather my thoughts. I needed to wait for the right opportunity. As I sipped my whiskey, I overheard snippets of conversation, people discussing their admiration for Ryan, their excitement over his latest film. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. They had no idea who he truly was, what he had done to me, to us. Then, as luck would have it, I spotted Lisa across the room, her eyes scanning the crowd. She was dressed to the nines, a vision of beauty that had once captivated me. But now all I felt was resentment. How could she stand there, mingling with the very people who adored the man who had betrayed me? It struck me like a lightning bolt. I could use her as part of my plan. I moved closer, positioning myself just out of her sight. I watched as she laughed and chatted, her demeanor relaxed, as if the weight of her betrayal didn't exist. I felt a surge of anger. It was time to remind her of the consequences of her actions. I pulled out my phone and began typing furiously, crafting an anonymous message to send to a few gossip bloggers I had been following. It was time to let the world know about the affair, to paint Ryan in the light he deserved. I hit send and felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. I was taking control of the narrative, orchestrating a scene that would bring both of them crashing down. I imagined the headlines: Hollywood star's infidelity exposed at charity gala. The thought sent a thrill through me. Just then, I noticed Ryan breaking away from his admirers, making his way toward the bar. My heart raced as I prepared myself for the confrontation. I could feel the energy in the room shift as he approached, the laughter fading into a tense silence. I stood tall, ready to face him. "Ryan," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the chatter. He turned, surprise flickering across his face as he recognized me. I could see the gears turning in his mind, the realization dawning that I was not just another face in the crowd. "Do I know you?" he asked, feigning ignorance, but I saw the glimmer of recognition in his eyes. "No, but I know you," I replied, my tone dripping with disdain. You think you can just waltz into my life and take what's mine without consequences." His expression shifted from confusion to annoyance. "Listen, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want any trouble." "Too late for that," I shot back, feeling the tension crackle between us. "You've already created enough trouble. You think this is just a game. You think you can charm your way through life while ruining others." I could see the crowd around us beginning to take notice, whispers spreading like wildfire. I had their attention now, and I was going to make sure they heard my story. "You're a fraud, Ryan, a cheating scumbag hiding behind a facade of charm and success." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "You think this is just going to blow over? People are going to know who you really are. Your image is about to take a hit, and I'm the one pulling the strings." Ryan's face turned an interesting shade of pale as he realized the implications of my words. The crowd was watching, their eyes darting between us, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I felt a rush of exhilaration. I was finally the one in control. Just as I was about to say more, I caught a glimpse of Lisa in my peripheral vision, her face a mixture of shock and horror. I knew I had crossed a line, but I didn't care. I had become the architect of my revenge, and I was ready to watch it unfold. As I stepped back, I could see the realization settling in for both of them. I had set my plan in motion, and there was no turning back now. I would make sure that Ryan Matthews' biggest role was indeed that of a cheating scumbag. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically after my confrontation with Ryan. The whispers grew louder, and I could feel the collective gaze of the gala attendees bearing down on us. I reveled in the chaos I had created, a twisted sense of satisfaction coursing through me. This was the moment I had envisioned, the moment when the truth would begin to unravel the carefully woven tapestry of Ryan Matthews' public persona. As I stepped back, I noticed Lisa's expression morph from shock to anger. She stormed toward me, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and fury. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed, her voice low but laced with urgency. "You can't just confront him like that." I met her gaze, unyielding. "Why not? This is exactly what he deserves. You think he can just waltz in and take everything from me without consequences?" "Consequences?" she shot back, her voice rising. "And what about us? You're making a scene. Do you really think this will solve anything?" I could see the fear in her eyes, fear of the fallout that was inevitable, but I was past the point of caring. "You made your choice, Lisa. You chose him over me. I'm just making sure he understands what he's done." Ryan, still standing nearby, seemed to regain his composure as he watched our exchange. His annoyance morphed into a smirk as if he was enjoying the spectacle. "Look, man, I don't know what your deal is, but this is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You're the one who should be embarrassed. You think you're untouchable, don't you? A Hollywood star with a pretty face. Well, I'm about to show everyone what lies beneath that facade." I turned my back to him, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had come here to destroy him, to expose the truth, and I was determined to see it through. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me, the whispers growing louder. I had become the center of attention, and I wasn't about to let that slip away. As I moved away from the bar, I felt a rush of exhilaration. My plan was working. I had planted the seeds of doubt in Ryan's mind, and I knew that the rumors I had started would gain traction. I could almost hear the clicks of cameras capturing the moment, the headlines that would soon follow. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was losing control. The thrill of revenge had consumed me, but I was beginning to realize that it was also consuming my humanity. I glanced back at Lisa, who was now trying to calm Ryan down, her face a mask of desperation. I felt a twinge of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. The rest of the evening was a blur. I mingled with guests, pretending to be part of their world while my mind raced with thoughts of what I had just done. I could see Ryan's face in my mind, the shock and anger radiating from him. I felt powerful, but there was also an undercurrent of anxiety. What if he retaliated? What if my actions had unforeseen consequences that would come back to haunt me? As the gala began to wind down, I slipped out into the cool night air, my heart still racing. I needed to keep the momentum going. I pulled out my phone and started drafting another message to the gossip bloggers I had been in contact with. I wanted to ensure that the narrative I was creating would stick. I needed to make Ryan's infidelity a topic of discussion, something that couldn't be easily brushed aside. The following morning, I awoke to a flurry of notifications on my phone. My heart raced as I opened social media, and there it was: articles, tweets, and gossip columns buzzing with the news of Ryan Matthews' alleged affair. The headlines were sensational, painting him as a heartbreaker who had betrayed not just me but countless fans who idolized him. I felt a rush of triumph wash over me. This was what I had wanted. My plan was working, and I was finally seeing the fruits of my labor. I spent the day glued to my phone, watching as the story spread like wildfire. Ryan's publicist issued a vague denial, but it only added fuel to the fire. People wanted to know more, and I was more than happy to oblige. But as the day wore on, the thrill of victory began to fade. I started to receive calls from friends and family, concerned about what was happening. They had seen the headlines and wanted to know if I was okay. The questions began to weigh on me, and I felt the weight of my actions pressing down. I realized I was becoming the villain in my own story, a man consumed by revenge, losing sight of the person I had been before all of this began. I had set out to expose Ryan and make him pay, but in doing so I was dragging my own life into the mud. As night fell, I found myself sitting alone in our living room, the silence deafening. I replayed the events of the gala in my mind, the confrontation, the rush of adrenaline, and the aftermath. I had succeeded in tarnishing Ryan's image, but at what cost? I glanced at the empty space next to me where Lisa would normally sit, and the reality of my situation settled in. I had lost more than just my wife. I was losing myself. The man I had become was a stranger, fueled by anger and resentment. I knew I had to make a choice. I could continue down this path of destruction, or I could find a way to reclaim my life, to move on from the pain. But the thought of letting go of my revenge felt like a betrayal in itself. I was torn between the desire for closure and the need to heal. I needed to decide what kind of man I wanted to be moving forward. The days that followed were a whirlwind of media coverage, speculation, and gossip. Ryan Matthews became a trending topic, the headlines relentless in their pursuit of scandal. I watched as the world turned against him, the once beloved actor now painted as a villain in a sordid affair. It was surreal, watching the fallout from my actions unfold in real time. But amidst the chaos, I felt a growing emptiness inside me. The initial thrill of revenge had dulled, replaced by a gnawing sense of regret. I had become the puppet master in this twisted drama, but the strings I pulled came at a cost. I was losing my grip on my own life, consumed by the narrative I had created. Each morning, I woke up to a barrage of notifications, friends reaching out, concerned about my well-being, and strangers commenting on my posts, some offering support, others casting judgment. I felt like I was living in a fishbowl, every action scrutinized, every word dissected. I had become a public figure in my own right, but it felt hollow. The more I engaged with the fallout, the more I realized how deeply I was entangled in this web of betrayal, not just with Ryan but with Lisa and even with myself. I tried to reach out to Lisa, to talk about what had happened, but she avoided me. It was as if she was afraid to face the consequences of her actions, afraid to confront the man her choices had turned me into. I found myself alone, grappling with the emotional turmoil that had become my reality. I longed for closure, but every time I saw her, I was reminded of the pain she had caused. One evening, after another day of media frenzy, I decided to confront her. I texted her, asking her to meet me at a small cafe we used to frequent. I needed to understand where we stood, what had happened to us, and if there was any way to salvage what was left. To my surprise, she agreed. As I sat at the cafe, the familiar ambience of clinking cups and soft chatter did little to soothe my nerves. I watched as Lisa approached, her expression cautious, her body language guarded. She looked beautiful, but there was a distance in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. "Hey," she said softly, sliding into the chair across from me. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm glad you came." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. Finally, I spoke, my heart racing. "I need to know why Lisa. Why him? What did he offer you that I didn't?" Her eyes filled with tears and she took a deep breath. "It wasn't about him," she said, her voice trembling. "It was about me feeling lost. I thought I needed something different, something exciting. I made a terrible mistake and I'm so sorry." "Sorry," I echoed, bitterness creeping into my voice. "Sorry doesn't change what happened. You broke my trust, Lisa. You shattered everything we built together." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been living with that guilt every day since. I never meant for it to go this far. I was stupid and selfish." I leaned back in my chair, the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "And what about Ryan? You think he's just going to walk away from this unscathed? I've made sure the world knows who he really is." Lisa's eyes widened in horror. "What do you mean? What did you do?" I felt a surge of triumph, but it was quickly overshadowed by the weight of my actions. "I exposed him. I made sure everyone knew about the affair. His reputation is in ruins and it's all because of me." She recoiled, her expression a mixture of shock and anger. "You don't get it, do you? You're making this worse. You're dragging us both down with him." I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. "He deserves it, Lisa. He ruined my life." "But what about us?" she pleaded, her voice rising. "You think this will fix things between us? You think I'll just come back to you after watching you destroy someone else's life? You're becoming someone I don't even recognize." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so consumed by my desire for revenge that I hadn't considered the impact it would have on my own humanity. I had turned into a man driven by anger, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of a twisted sense of justice. "Maybe that's who I am now," I shot back, my voice thick with emotion. "Maybe I'm tired of being the victim." "Is that what you want?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "To be the villain in your own story?" I fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. I had become the very thing I despised, someone who reveled in destruction, blinded by rage. I thought of all the moments we had shared, the love that had once filled our lives. I had let revenge consume me, and now I was losing the last remnants of that love. "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "All I wanted was to make him pay for what he did to us, but I didn't think about how it would affect you or me." Lisa reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it over mine. "We need to find a way to heal, not just for us, but for ourselves. This cycle of revenge isn't going to bring you peace. It's only going to hurt us both." I looked into her eyes, searching for the spark of the woman I had loved. I could see the pain reflected there, the regret, and the hope for something better, but could I let go of the anger that had consumed me? Could I forgive her and myself? "I don't know if I can," I said honestly, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Then let's work on it together," she urged. "We can't change the past, but we can choose how we move forward. I want to try, but you have to let go of this obsession with revenge. It's only going to destroy us." Her words resonated deep within me, and for the first time I felt the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I realized that I had a choice to make. I could continue down this path of destruction or begin to reclaim my life, my identity, and perhaps even my marriage. "I'll try," I finally said, my voice trembling. "I'll try to let go." We sat in silence, the tension between us slowly dissipating. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. As I left the cafe that day, I felt a sense of resolve. I wouldn't abandon my quest for justice entirely, but I would reshape it. I would find a way to expose Ryan Matthews without losing myself in the process. I could confront the truth of my pain without allowing it to define me. It was time to take a step back and reassess my priorities. Revenge had been my driving force, but perhaps it was time to focus on healing. The days after my conversation with Lisa were a mix of uncertainty and cautious hope. I had made a commitment to let go of my obsession with revenge, but the path forward felt daunting. I was still grappling with the fallout of my actions, the chaos I had unleashed on Ryan Matthews, and the ripple effects it had on my life and my marriage. I decided to take a step back from the media frenzy. I stopped engaging with the gossip columns and the social media chatter. Instead, I focused on reconnecting with Lisa, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was a slow process, filled with awkward silences and tentative conversations, but we were both willing to work at it. One evening, after a long day, at work I came home to find Lisa in the kitchen preparing dinner. The familiar scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, and for the first time in weeks I felt a sense of normalcy. I watched her as she moved about the kitchen, a sense of warmth washing over me. "Need any help?" I asked, stepping closer. She glanced up, a smile breaking through the tension that had lingered between us. "Actually, yes. Could you chop some vegetables?" As I took the knife and began slicing the peppers, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We chatted about mundane things, work, plans for the weekend, and even some light-hearted memories from our early days together. It was refreshing, a reminder of the bond we had once shared. "Do you think we'll ever get past this?" Lisa asked, her voice softening as she stirred the pot on the stove. "I hope so," I replied honestly. "I want to try. I know I'm not the same person I was before all of this, but maybe we can find a way to move forward together." She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I want that too. I don't want to lose you." The conversation lingered in the air as we sat down to eat. We both knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time I felt like we were on the same team again, ready to face whatever came our way. Meanwhile, Ryan's reputation continued to spiral as the media frenzy raged on. I watched from the sidelines, feeling a mix of satisfaction and guilt. I had achieved what I set out to do, but at what cost? I realized that the revenge I had sought wasn't bringing me the closure I thought it would. Instead, it had left me feeling empty, and I knew I had to take responsibility for my actions. One afternoon, I decided to reach out to Ryan. It was a bold move, but I felt it was necessary. I wanted to confront him, not with anger but with honesty. I needed to understand the man behind the headlines, the man who had unknowingly become a catalyst for my transformation. I sent him a message asking to meet. To my surprise, he agreed. We chose a quiet cafe, the kind of place where conversations could happen without prying eyes. As I arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This wasn't just about confronting him, it was about confronting my own demons. When Ryan walked in, he looked different, haggard and worn, the weight of the scandal clearly taking its toll on him. He spotted me and approached with cautious steps. "So, we finally meet," he said, his voice low. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I wanted to talk." We sat across from each other, the tension palpable. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I've been on a pretty dark path since all of this happened. I thought revenge would make me feel better, but it hasn't. It's only left me feeling hollow." He nodded, his expression shifting from defensiveness to something softer. "I get it. I never wanted any of this. I made a mistake and it blew up in all our faces. I'm sorry for what happened between us." I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. "I'm sorry too, for how I handled everything. I let my anger consume me, and in doing so I lost sight of who I was." Ryan looked down, his hands resting on the table. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I was caught up in my own issues and I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted to feel something different." We sat in silence for a moment, the reality of our shared pain hanging in the air. "Can we move past this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Not just for us, but for Lisa too." "I hope so," he replied, looking me in the eye. "But it's going to take time. We can't erase what's happened, but maybe we can learn from it." As we left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure begin to settle within me. I didn't want to be defined by revenge or anger anymore. I wanted to reclaim my life, to focus on healing and building a future that didn't revolve around the past. In the weeks that followed, I continued to work on my relationship with Lisa. We attended couples counseling, where we could talk openly about our feelings and fears. It wasn't easy, but we were both committed to the process. I learned to forgive not just Lisa but myself as well. I realized that holding onto anger only held me back from moving forward. Ryan's career took a hit, but as time passed, he began to rebuild his image, focusing on more meaningful projects. I watched from a distance, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie. We were both navigating the aftermath of our choices, trying to find our way back to a sense of normalcy. As for me, I found solace in writing again. I poured my experiences into my work, channeling my emotions into stories that reflected my journey. It became a form of therapy, a way to process everything that had happened. Months later, as I sat in our living room with Lisa, I realized how far we had come. We were no longer the broken couple we had been. We were rebuilding, creating a new foundation for our life together. There were still challenges ahead, but we faced them hand in hand. In the end, I learned that revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but true healing comes from forgiveness and understanding. I had transformed my pain into something meaningful, and for that, I was grateful. As I looked at Lisa, a sense of peace washed over me. We had both made mistakes, but we were willing to learn and grow. Together, we were finding our way back to love. And in that moment, I knew I was ready to embrace whatever the future held.